We're back here, whole 9 yards on a Tuesday night NBA episode. So we're just gonna get straight into it. Solid game last night between the Bucks and the Nets. The Nets ended up winning. What was the final score? 125, 123.
Yeah.
And I mean, my immediate reactions from that game is, I mean, we're looking at the two best teams in the East right now. And as far as pure talent's concerned, I mean, the Nets, obviously Durant, Harden, and eventually Kyrie, and the Bucks. I mean, they're the Bucks. Obviously, they didn't do too well in the playoffs last year, but I mean, Giannis is still a top 5 player, at least probably top 3 in the NBA. Middleton is still there. Holiday. I don't see, at least from the first 15 or so games from each team, these two teams look like the best in the East right now. The Celtics have certainly done well as well, but I just, talent wise, the Nets and the Bucks are probably still a tier, and the Nets are probably a tier ahead of the Bucks at this point if they have all three stars. I mean, I don't know what are your takeaways from at least Harden joining the Nets so far?
Yeah, I mean, I say it's only been 2 games, but I'd say it's been pretty good. I mean, the one thing that was going to be a concern was their defense. And they haven't looked great defensively so far in these. It's only been 2 games, like I said, but that's probably going to be a trend. Is that they're going to be giving up 110 points plus per game, and they're going to probably score like 120. So that's kind of what they're going with, in that they're just going to outscore opponents. I mean, Harden, I think he's been really good. I was thinking about this last night when watching the game. I actually kind of like Harden and Durant better than Durant and Irving. Like if you were to go back before the trade, like let's say it was the team that Katie and Kyrie had with LeVert and Prince and Allen, but you replace Irving with Harden. I actually like that team a lot better than I do Durant and Irving. And I saw that just watching last night, it just seemed like, now maybe Harden changes. It seems like he just got traded there. He's trying to pass the ball a lot. I mean, I know he's playing point guard, but he's definitely passing the ball a lot more than he ever was. Probably last like 7 years, I'd say. Even though he did lead the league in assists like 1 or 2 years. I mean, those assists are driving kicks or driving to alley oop, so that's it's not like a real assist or real passing. But he's looked a lot better in that aspect so far. But I was just thinking about it. I was like, I would feel like a team with LeVert, Allen, Durant, Harden, Prince. We could say Dinwiddie would be injured, but like I think I would like that team better than if it was KD and Kyrie. So I'm not really sure how Kyrie's going to work with this team. I'm pretty sure he's playing tomorrow, Wednesday, against the Cavs. That's what it seems like. So it will be interesting to see how he plays with them, because I think Harden and KD kind of have something down already. So it will be interesting to see how Kyrie's going to fit into that.
In your opinion, is this the most talented big three ever? I mean, I think it probably
Well,
is.
I would say 3 individual talents, yes. Um, as just a big three, I'd say that Steph, Katie, and Clay were better. But I mean, that's also we saw them for 3 years. I mean, 2.5 years, 2.25 years, whatever it was. But for 3 years when they were together, they were clearly the best team in the league, and they were three of the top 20 players in the league. So I'd say that they were probably the best big three, at least I've ever seen. And then probably like LeBron, Wade, Bosh. But again, like if you were just to put those two big threes together, clearly the Warriors one was better than the Heat one. This one, individually wise, I'd say they're probably the 3 most talented individual players that are on a team together, probably ever. But just and like also in their prime, like in the time that they were playing. But as a team, I don't know where I'd put them, but they wouldn't be top three, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I probably agree with that. It's gonna be, I mean, it's gonna be very interesting to see how Irving fits on this team. I don't, I think just like we saw Irving come into the Celtics team when he got injured, when Irving had, or sorry, Hayward had the broken ankle or whatever. He came the year after when Boston made the Eastern Conference Finals with just like Tatum Brown and the rest of those guys. It just ruined the chemistry, and it was never there. The chemistry was never there. The shot amount of shots people were taking were always weird. I mean, you had like Rozier. It was just nothing worked. The chemistry wasn't there, and I think not all of the blame, but a majority of that blame was Kyrie Irving. Whether it be he wants the shots or his personality is just so unpredictable and you never know what you're going to get out of him. It's going to be interesting to see how that works in Brooklyn. I think it has a lot of potential to just not work. And I definitely agree with you. Like, I think if you could make an argument that, the Allen, all those guys that you traded away with Durant and Harden is better than Durant, Harden, and Kyrie with no Allen and
Yeah,
all those
yeah.
guys. I would probably believe that. That's probably what I would believe, like right now at least. We'll have to see how Irving's integrated into the offense, especially. But I don't know if I see his place. And back in 2016, he was okay with being the Robin to LeBron's Batman or whatever. And eventually, he hit that shot and all that. His ego. He's also like a really great player, so he didn't want to be the number two. He wanted to be the number one. He didn't. He realized that didn't work out in Boston. He wanted to, he whatever apologized to LeBron or whatever. They had that whatever, but now he's in Brooklyn, and now he's going to be the number three in Brooklyn. So I know he's okay with not necessarily being the number one, but how is he going to actually feel now that he's back in? Not only is he not in the Robin place, but he's in like I don't even know, like he third.
The Alfred place.
Yeah, he's the third best player on that team, but objectively. So, I mean, we'll see how things work out. Obviously, at their ceiling, if this team were to reach a ceiling, I'm not even sure what that would look like. I don't know what that would look like if this team chemistry hit a ceiling, but they'd probably just win the NBA Finals. I mean, I don't. LeBron and AD may be able to put up a fight, but if this team reaches their ceiling, I don't know if anybody's really stopping them offensively, and it might not even matter how good they play defensively if they can just be like average. Um,
Well, I'll say they'll probably, if they were to face the Lakers in the finals, I'd say they'd probably struggle because the size difference. I mean, you're asking DeAndre Jordan, Jeff Green, maybe they pick someone up to guard Anthony Davis. I don't really like that matchup for the Nets. Well, like, I mean, in the preseason, I picked Nets over Lakers in 7 games because of that size. They would have had Allen. So you would have Allen first and then Jordan. You could even throw Prince in there, who could somewhat guard. He could at least be a body to throw at LeBron. You'd still have like Durant, who is, before the injury, he was really good defensively. I think people actually kind of forget about that, but you could throw him also in there. But like you had more guys to throw at, like a LeBron or an AD. When you lose Allen and Prince, then you're asking Jeff Green to play more, cover more guys. DeAndre Jordan, who's not the same defensively as he was just like 4 or 5 years ago. So I think they'll definitely struggle size wise with LA, but offensively, I mean, offensively, they're better than LA is, I would say. Again, assuming that they click on the right path. But defensively, I think they definitely would struggle against LA.
I mean, like right now, if you ask me if they had a series right now in the finals, like I would pick LA just because the chemistry's not there. And if I had to bet on the chemistry being there or not being there, I would bet on not being there come finals or playoff
Yeah.
time, really. Now, do they need to be at 100%? Do they need to all be integrated into the offense? And, do they need to be at 100% to make the finals? Probably not. They could probably be 80% and make the finals for sure. They'd probably have to be at 90 or 100% or whatever chemistry to really beat the Lakers, especially given the fact that I mean, is anybody on the Nets going to have a good time guarding Davis? I mean, no. I mean, is anybody in the league? No, but like they just don't have anybody they don't have an Iguodala to the LeBron. They just really don't have it. And, we'll see how it works out. But
Yeah.
again, and the Nets it's just gonna rely on the chemistry. Is it gonna be there? And we'll just have to see on that one.
Yeah, and then one more thing from the game on the Buck side. This, I mean, the game came down to the wire. Like I said, it was 125, 123, but there's two things I want to say. So start with the Nets. So Harden, so it's 41 seconds left. Harden has the ball. So again, closing time. I'd rather have KD have the ball and take the last shot. Harden had the ball. He took a three, missed it. He did get the rebound and passed to KD, who made a three. So that's one thing that Harden, I think, is going to have to not worry about, is that he's not going to be the guy taking the shots at the end. It's going to be KD and then Kyrie and then Harden. So I think for the first like 44 minutes of the game, Harden can kind of do what he wants, but then for those last couple minutes, he's going to have to in order for them to really win games, and especially when it comes to the playoffs. He's gonna have to give it to Katie and Kyrie to take those final shots because as we've seen, he just can't make those shots. No matter what he does for the first 44 minutes, in those last 4 minutes, he just doesn't make those threes that he usually makes. He doesn't get the calls that he usually gets because usually refs just don't give calls at the end of games like that. So I think that's one thing that's going to help is that if he can just defer at the end of games, which he should want to because you have Katie and Kyrie who can take those shots and make them, that's going to be great for them because you're still going to have to worry about him because, I mean, he definitely can make the shot if he needs to, but we just seen that he can't. But you have Katie and Kyrie, you can do that. So that's one thing for the Nets side. But then for the Bucks, and they said this on the broadcast, I think it was Chris Webber who was calling the game. On that last play, it was they gave the ball to Chris Middleton, and he took a kind of like a contested three in the corner, and he missed it. But I mean, Giannis wasn't even involved in the play. And again, it was only a 2-point game. They could have went for a two. I think they had like 4 seconds left to get a play. He wasn't even involved in the play. No, I don't even think they set a screen for him. Nothing for him to flash open, get the ball, and try to drive. So that's been a problem for them is that their best player and like you said, a top 3, top 5 player in the NBA doesn't get the ball late in the game because one, he can't hit free throws, he can't shoot from the outside, and they usually don't give calls at the end of games. And that's one thing that he really relies on is that he drives to the rim. He rather dunks it, lays it up, or he gets fouled. So if they can't trust him down the stretch, again, these last couple years they haven't been able to. I don't think Chris Middleton is a good enough player in order to hit those clutch shots every single time. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that really holds them back. They're great defensively, they're great offensively, in shooting threes and getting points. But when it comes to the playoffs, as we've seen, Giannis just isn't the guy to make shots at the end of games, and they clearly don't trust him to take those shots too.
Yeah, I mean, the one problem I had with the Bucks offseason is really just, you can trade for Drew Holiday, you can do whatever you want, but if you're not bringing in the guy that's going to make the shots late in the game, is going to be essentially be like a very good, what Kyrie was to LeBron almost in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get over that hump, and we'll see this season. I mean, can Middleton slash Drew Holiday slash, the rest of them, will they be able to, be good enough late game in order to, make up for the fact that Giannis just isn't really that great late fourth quarter? I mean, we'll see, but that's going to be another big thing in the playoffs. And if we see Giannis go in the second round again, I mean, it's just going to come up and come up again. It's similar to, I mean, it's just a reality of Giannis's game. And is he going to improve it at this point? I mean, probably not. If we haven't seen it yet, I mean, he could probably improve his shot a little bit, but is he going to get to the point where he's able to create his own shot to the point where you can trust him with 30 seconds left in the game? Probably not. Probably not.
He just needs to work on the 17 to 20-foot shots. Like he doesn't have to be a great 3-point shooter. And he takes a lot of them, which I mean, I know they're giving it to him. Like if you're watching the game last night, they were just playing like 10 feet off him, just giving him the threes. I mean, I guess you'd have to take him because you're just wide open, but I mean, I would just step inside the 3-point line and just take like a long two. I mean, it's obviously not. I mean, now in today's game, that's not the more efficient shot technically, because you rather just take the three if you're going to take a long two. But if you can just work on the 17 to 20-foot shots and be able to hit those more
You got to keep the
consistently,
defense honest. I
yeah,
mean,
because obviously he wants to drive, but if you can just hit those mid-range shots, like it's kind of the same thing with Ben Simmons. If you could just hit mid-range shots, then you're at least keeping the defense honest, so that if you can, that when you do drive, they're off their heels, and you can get by them, or they'll foul you, or you can just make the mid-range shot. And at the end of games, it's a 2-point game. You give him the ball, he makes a move, and takes a mid-range shot. It's a tie game. So that's something that you would think he would have worked on these last 2 years. I guess clearly he hasn't. So and again, he's only 26, 27 years old, so he definitely can. But I would say it probably has to happen in the next year or two if they're really going to compete for a real championship.
I definitely agree. It's exactly the same thing that happens to Simmons as well, and it
Yeah,
happened to Rondo back in the. It still technically happens to Rondo, but I
but he's
mean,
not that
back
type of
when
player,
no,
though.
what I'm saying is back when Rondo was a top 5 point guard, and it was after KG and all them left, and it was just Rondo, and the whole thing was like, could you build a team around Rondo? And the answer was no, because if he has no shooters around him, and he also can't shoot, and the defense gets to just sit in the paint, I mean, Rondo can't really drive, he can't shoot, he can't kick it out anymore because there's no shooters. So it's like you're kind of out of luck there. But yeah, I mean, Giannis will definitely have to improve that for them to to make or win the finals most likely.
Yeah.
We can move on though. We'll talk about the Blazers. I mean, the Blazers have had a pretty solid start to the year, but I mean, Nurkic is out for what, at least a couple months. I want to say he's out for a couple months.
Yeah, he like
McCollum is out for a month at
yeah.
least. Um,
Yeah, McCollum's going to be out for like it's a month just till he gets reevaluated, so that's probably a month and a half to 2 months.
yeah, I mean, so I think I forget exactly where I had them in my preseason predictions, but is this still a playoff team? If let's just say Nurkic and McCollum are out for both 2 months. I mean, is this team still going to be able to make the playoffs? Because I think at least if the Blazers make the playoffs, we'll just say they're the 7 seed or something, or the 6 seed or the 8 seed. I mean, they're going to be a scary low seed to fight against, especially just once you have McCollum back and Nurkic. I mean, you're essentially playing against a team that probably, if they had those players, would be higher than a 7 or 8 seed. But for 2 months worth of games, if they don't stay afloat there, they might just be out of luck and they might just be out of the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean the one thing that doesn't help. So Nurkic is out 8 weeks, which is 2 months. And then McCollum, like I said, is probably a month and a half to 2 months. So they're kind of like the same timetable, but right now they're 8-6. I'd say so. The teams, just looking at the standings right now, I mean, you have San Antonio who's also 8-6. I'd say that probably doesn't like throughout the whole season. They're probably not going to be above 500. So I'd say they probably drop. They have Golden State also 7-6. I'd say they're probably going to be like that, like a 7-8 seed. And then Memphis is 7-6. I mean, they played well when Ja was out, which we can get to later, but I'd say they probably maybe stay around there, probably drop a little bit. And then you have teams like Dallas and Denver who are still not in the playoffs, or 6-7, and they're both 6-7. So I'd say they probably move up. So these next 2 months, Lillard's gonna have to, average like 35 points a game. He's gonna have to play like an MVP in order for them to win games. And if they drop just a little bit, I know there's the play-in tournament, so they can be a 9-10 seed, but it's still going to be tough if they start losing games. It's going to be tough for them to get to that 9-10 seed because you still have teams like Sacramento, possibly New Orleans, possibly. You still have a couple teams, and again, maybe San Antonio, maybe Memphis. So it's going to be tough for them to stay afloat during these next 2 months, even when you still have Lillard, in order to get like a 9-10 seed.
I mean, the Western Conference is just so competitive that if you're losing your second and third best players for 2 months, it's going to be very tough because, I mean, yeah, like
Yeah.
Dallas for sure is going to be in the playoffs. Denver's for sure going to be in the playoffs. And then out of Memphis, New Orleans, out of one of those two will at least be competitive to the point where they're going to be pushing the Blazers, making them sweat as well. And San Antonio as well will probably be in the mix, especially if Nurkic and McCollum are going to be out 2 months. So we'll see. I mean, ultimately, does it really matter like which of all of these whatever 4 teams make the playoffs? No, because they're all going to be first round exits most likely regardless. But I mean, yeah, it'll just be interesting to see because I mean, Lillard's going to have to carry this team on his back, and I mean, he's done it before, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see.
And they really don't. I mean, they had a couple of free agent signings. Like they traded for Robert Covington. They signed Derrick Jones Jr. They signed Ennis Canner at the end, but they really never got a backup point guard, which was something that they needed the entire offseason, and they never got a backup point guard. So you lose McCollum, and McCollum was having a career. He was averaging 27 points a game. He was playing, I mean, arguably the same or even better than Lillard was playing throughout the first, 15 games or whatever it was. And then Nurkic, who what hadn't been as good as he was in like the bubble last year, but he's still your third best player and probably a top 10 center, I'd say. So losing them to not having a backup point guard, so Lillard's probably going to have to play 36 plus minutes a game most every single night. It's just gonna be a lot on him, and then hoping that when those guys come back, they're as good as they were, and hoping that you're somewhere close to where you can rattle off a couple wins, towards the end of the season. It's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs or even get in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, a team that they're gonna have to compete with Memphis. I mean, they've been doing extremely well as of recently. I think they just got their 5th straight win over the Suns
Yeah.
yesterday. Uh, I mean, again, we talked about them before. They're a super young team. Ideally, and I mean, what are your reactions from Memphis's hot start considering their injuries?
Yeah, I mean, they were missing Jaw for I think it was 8 games, which it's pretty surprising he came back that fast. It seemed like he was going to be out for like a month. I think it was what, like 2.5 weeks. It was.
I mean, the last time we talked about the Grizzlies, we basically just said like, yeah, I mean, they're probably done considering Jaws out for a while, and if he only missed 8 games, I mean, yeah,
It just seemed like he was going to miss more, which that would have been that would have been if he would have missed like 12 to 15. And again, they've been playing pretty good when he was out. I mean, they struggled at first when they got a couple wins before he went out, and then they've won 2 straight since he's come back in. So, yeah, I mean, do I expect it to like stay, like them keep trending this way? Probably not. I mean, they are still missing Jaren Jackson, so whenever he comes back, that'll definitely help. But I just I don't see them still being like a playoff team when it comes to the end of the season. I know you picked them to be in the playoffs, but I picked them. I think I may have picked them. I don't even know if I picked them to be in my play-in tournament, maybe the 10 seed, but
I
I
don't
don't
think
know.
you
I
did.
just maybe there's something about him. I mean, Taylor Jenkins, he was his rookie year head coach last year. I mean, he seems like a pretty good coach. And maybe Ja really is like a superstar type player where he could just lead a team to wins when he needs to. But I just don't see them being able to keep this up for the rest of the season.
So, I mean, I think I can see them being in the play-in tournament. They did it. They basically did it last year. They were much hotter at the early parts of the year than they were the later half. I don't know if that's because it's the young players and rookies tend to just kind of get fatigued as the year goes on. Maybe that'll be different this year. We'll see. It's only 72 game season, potentially less with who knows what happens. But I mean, I think ideally the shorter the season, it seems like that's going to be better for the Grizzlies, assuming if what happened last year happens this year. But I definitely think this Grizzlies team can make the playoffs. I think Jaws. I don't know exactly where you'd have him in your top 50 players in the league, but he's a he's extremely good. I mean, he's better than you would have expected from the number 2 overall pick, even considering he is the number 2 overall pick from a couple years ago. He's played so well. Triple J, obviously, when he gets back, he was a great draft pick a few years ago. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's a young team. Even if they make the playoffs, are they going to make any noise? No, but it's all about, being, at least, my opinion, it's about building a winning culture. And we'll see what happens from there. But if you can build a winning culture and you can maybe get a free agent down the road, not even a max free agent, but if Ja becomes a top 2, top 3 point guard down the road, if Triple J can become a top 5 power forward or something in the future, and then you can get some sort of free agent on a max contract who's really good as well, probably not like a top 10 player, but if you can get like a top 30 player to go along with them and you have like 3 top 30 players down the road, I mean, this is a team that can definitely compete for, at least something.
Yeah, I mean that'd be the best case scenario I think for them, but there's a couple problems with that. I mean, I think Ja can be I would say he's probably already like a top 40 player, I'd say. He's in that 30 to 40 range, somewhere around there. But the thing, I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr., he's good when he plays, but the thing is, he seems to always be injured. So if he could just stay healthy, then yeah, that's a really good 1-2 punch. I mean, point guard, like a stretch four who could shoot from the outside is really good defense. Them getting like a free agent, that's gonna be a problem. Again, it doesn't have to be like a top 10 guy or anything like that, but even to be a top 30, 40 guy, that's gonna be tough only because there's such a small market. And I know technically
Yeah.
it doesn't matter in that, like you have a guy like Ja who could be a top guy and could be really marketable, but still you're playing in Memphis. It's a small market. You're in the middle of the country. You're kind of nowhere. So that's going to be tough. They're probably going to have to develop someone. I mean, you look at guys on their team like a Dylan Brooks, he's all right. He's a good 2 guard for a team like this, but on like a championship level team, he's on the bench and he's coming off the
Yeah. Other
bench.
than
But he'd
him and
be
Triple J, you don't have anything other than role players for the most part. But I
yeah,
mean, I think if you brought in
I mean,
somebody
they have Brandon
like,
Clark, who I think is actually really good, but he's not that type of guy.
yeah, he's probably not he's not a three. He's not a
Yeah.
three. I mean, if down the road somebody like you brought in somebody like Tobias Harris on a max contract, except instead of not being Tobias Harris, they were, they improved off of that max contract, that'd be like your best case scenario. Now, I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be hard to pull off, but you'd either have to do that or, yeah, I mean, you'd have to draft another person now. Now you get into the discussion of if you are making the playoffs, or even if you are competing for the playoffs and you're the 9 and 10 seed or something like that, like it's going to be hard for you to actually find a three on a championship caliber team at anywhere. I mean, anywhere above like 5, it's very difficult to do, really.
Yeah. They'd have to, like, if it was a free agent, they kind of have to overpay for a guy. Maybe not even overpay, but kind of have to hope that the guy that they're going to get just turns into be like a three or just a wing who could just be a good defender, could shoot the ball, scores points, just as like a team guy. I mean, there's not many guys like that. Like Tobias Harris was like that kind of guy. He could play some defense, he could shoot, score points, he's a team guy, he could pass the ball too, could rebound. But obviously, I mean, they overpaid him to begin with, but he obviously hasn't. He's been playing pretty well this year, but I mean, the last year he wasn't great. So they're going to need a guy like that. And, you know, well, I think that really comes down on if Ja can be like a superstar type player, like a top 20 guy, and if Jaren Jackson can stay healthy.
I mean, so do you think Ja can be a top 20 guy or no? I mean, from the looks of it, it sounds like no, but
I mean, I would say I think it's just too early, which may sound weird because he was so great last year and he's been really good so far this year. But I would say over the next year or two, it'd be more evident, but I think he can be because he has that type of style of play. Like he's not a great shooter, but he actually makes some outside shots. He's obviously a great finisher at the rim. He can average like 9, 10 assists a game, and he seems like he could lead a team. But I mean, he got injured this year. He was a little injured last year. It seems like he's a little too aggressive with his play style, which may lead to injuries down the road. So I'm not going to say anything yet, but I think he definitely can be a top 20 type guy. But I would say top 20, not top 10.
I mean, I think he could be. I think 5 years down the road, he could be like he could be a top 3 point guard for sure.
Yeah, I think I
He could even be
I
top
mean,
2. I mean, if you assuming you count Luka as a point guard, he's probably
yeah,
never going to be
count him as
better
a
than
point guard.
Luka, but uh, he could be 2. I mean, he could be in 5 years, he could be the second best point guard in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I
Obviously,
could definitely see it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just not as high on him as maybe you are, but I'm definitely high, just not maybe that high.
yeah. I mean, sure. We can talk about the I mean, I know one of your favorite, well, not necessarily favorite teams, but a team that you were a bit higher on than I was going into this year, featuring probably the most overrated player of all time, Russell Westbrook. I mean, it's the Washington Wizards. I
Careful to
mean,
say.
what are your initial reactions? I guess, Wizards are 3-8 right now. And what are your initial reactions off that? And then Westbrook and Beal as well.
Well, they've had like 5 straight games canceled because of COVID. So I think it's actually working more towards their favor because Westbrook did get injured and he was going to be out for like a week or two. And he actually hasn't, I think he's only missed 1 game because of that, because of the cancels. So I think, well, there's a couple things. One, their center, Thomas Bryant, got injured. He's out for the season. Most people probably wouldn't even know who he really is, but he's someone who he's not great defensively, like at all. He doesn't really rebound that well, which it seems like there's a trend with centers nowadays that they just don't rebound, even though they're 7 foot and he's a 7 footer, and they somehow don't rebound like Miles Turner. They're kind of like the same. But he was averaging 17 points. He was really efficient this year. He could shoot the three. He was in like I think he was like 34% or something like that, 33%. He was like a stretch five kind of guy. He was actually a pretty good young player. I think it was like his third, fourth year in the league, but he tore his ACL, I think last week, maybe a week and a half ago now. So that's a big loss because they really don't have a center. They kind of have Robin Lopez and Mo Wagner kind of be
It's
their
what they didn't.
center.
It's what they didn't have like going into the year. Really, like they don't have the big defensive guy to really.
No,
That that
they
that
don't
was
have a defensive guy. You're right.
that was probably their biggest concern coming into this year was, I mean, like, where's the defense? And Russell Westbrook, I mean, he can be a good defensive player at times, and he is, but I mean, it's a point guard. It's not.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to do that much, and he's also older. But I think that, I mean, that's one thing that's now going to be a problem because he was there for the first 10 games and they were still really bad. But I mean, just as a whole, their defense as a whole is terrible. I mean, I think they were giving up what is it? They were giving up 120 points per game. I mean, they were giving up 100, yeah, 121 points per game, and they were scoring 120. So they could score a lot of points, but they also give up a ton of points. So I think I said this before. Like cut, if they could just work on their defensive game, they could always score. I mean, Beal, I think he's averaging 35 points per game. He's leading the league in scoring. They have Davis Bertans, who, he was coming in out of shape because he was coming out of the country and he couldn't really do anything. But he's been better as of late. Again, before they got shut down, but he's going to be your 3-point specialist who could score probably like 15 points per game. Rui Hachimura, he's actually played really well. He had like pink eye ever since he came back. He's been really well. The rookie Denny Villa, he's been all right. I think he's better when
He
Westbrook's
feels
not
like,
playing.
I think he just, for me at least, I mean, Denny kind of just feels like a bit of a waste on the team right now. I just feel like he doesn't have his place right now. But
I think he seems to be better when Westbrook wasn't playing because I think he's a guy who actually, you may not think he needs the ball, but he actually kind of does. He can make plays. He's actually a pretty good shooter from three. He's been making a lot of his threes from what I've watched, but I think he's better when Westbrook's not playing. But I think it's on Westbrook to change how he's playing. Like if you saw with Houston last year, he just went to the rim every single time. I know they went small, so he could do that, but he just, for some reason, he's not going to the rim anymore. And maybe it's because he was injured. He had a quad injury, which obviously affects, your jumping ability, but maybe it's his age also. I mean, he's 32, 33 years old. I think he's 32 years old. So if he can go back to attacking the rim, uh, and then allowing the shooters to open up on the outside, because when you attack, people are going to collapse. So you could kick to the outside or just make a layup and get fouled. You have Bradley Beal's going to give you 30 to 35 every single night. So I think they can be better, even with their terrible defensive efficiency and everything like that. I think they can be better, but with losing Thomas Bryant, I think it's really going to hurt. And with them being 3-8, it's going to be hard for them to. I know it's only been 11 games that they've played, but it's going to be hard for them. They're going to have to go on like a 7-game win streak. They're going to have to go on streaks of winning in order to come back and get into, like the 9-10 area, I would say. So it's definitely going to be tough.
yeah, I mean, this last year, I'm pretty sure they were the worst team in the league defensively.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
year, I mean, as long as they can honestly be like the 23rd, 22nd best defense in the league, they can probably make the playoffs as a 9 or 10 seed. They'll have to, go on a few streaks, like you said, here and there. But if they can finish, I mean, I guess it's a 72 game season, but if they can finish 500, as they can easily be a really good offense. And as long as they're not atrocious defensively, now, is that going to happen? I'm not exactly sure where you're going to be able to get better defensively unless you're making a trade. And I'm not sure, are you like the Wizards aren't dying to make a trade to pick up a defensive center who can, it's just not.
Well, they did get I think it was a $4.2 million exception on the injury for Thomas Bryant. So they technically could make a trade, but it's not like they're going to get like a stud defensive
Well,
guy
it's
or
what
anything
yeah,
like that.
like even if they, yeah, I mean, they're not going to get a game changing defensive center or anything like
Yeah.
that. They're
Yeah.
not going to, and even, I mean, yeah, like maybe you could trade for like um a Drummond, but
Well,
I
they
mean, would
wouldn't
you
do that
even,
as the money, but
yeah, the one you wouldn't do that, and
Like a
two,
JaVale McGee would be a pretty good
yeah,
pickup.
I mean, you could trade for JaVale. Now, I would only trade for JaVale if it was as the Wizards. I'm only trading for him if it's for like nothing, basically.
Well, yeah, you'd probably give up like a second round pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like that's probably what I would do though. Like I'm not trying to give up anything to win this year. There's just I don't
Yeah.
think there's
Yeah.
really a point unless it's to make your stars happy. And now that definitely matters in the NBA, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, what's Westbrook's contract right now? I'm not
Like
exact
money or years.
both.
It's like $47 million or something like that. And he's under contract for this year, obviously, and next year. And then I think he has an option after that.
Yeah, like if you're the Wizards, is it? I mean, I'm not exactly too sure what direction they're trying to go in. Maybe they're just trying to be good enough so that they're not like a bottom feeder team and they can make money. But I mean,
Well,
like, what do you do with Westbrook? I mean, I'm not exactly sure what Beal really wants anymore. If he wants to, I mean, he said he's wanted to stay. He's also said he's like kind of unhappy with things, but I'm really not sure like where you go. But
I would say they do whatever happens with Beal is going to affect Westbrook. So if they trade Beal, which I mean they've always said they're not going to trade him and they don't even take calls on him. So let's say they don't trade Beal. He also has 2 years left. I think it's this year and next year. Then I think he's a free agent after 2022. So let's say they keep him for the whole time. I'd say Westbrook's going to be there the whole time, unless he just like drastically declines or gets injured, and they just they can kind of just offload him to a team. So if that happens, I'd say it's going to be these two for the next 2.5 years. But are they ever going to win a championship? No. Are they going to be able to make it to like the second round of the playoffs? I mean, possibly if like a Rui or a Denny could kind of improve, you get Thomas Bryant back. I mean, again, their team, if you were to look at their team and the players on the roster when everyone's healthy, it's a pretty good team, but they're definitely going to fire Scott Brooks at the end of the year. So maybe that could be a difference. You get like a different coach, maybe someone who's just more. I mean, it seems like Scott Brooks, I'm still surprised he's even there. He's been there for like 6 years now. I'm surprised he wasn't fired before this, but he's definitely going to be fired at the end of the season. So maybe that can change things, but I mean, it's not like they have anything really to look forward to in the future.
yeah, that's just kind of what I mean, we'll see what happens, but yeah, I mean, a core of, I mean, Bradley Beal for sure can be a part of a championship winning team. I mean, this goes just back to Russell Westbrook in general, but I'm not even sure that Westbrook could ever be a part of a championship winning team.
Well, not at this stage, but
I mean,
you know,
ever.
well, I mean, he
I
was a
mean,
part of one, but
not a winning team.
no, but if they didn't have the money problems that they had, then they would still have James Harden, and then the league would be completely different. So,
Well,
and even
well,
20, even
they did
2016,
have the opportunity to keep Harden. They had to choose between Ibaka and Harden. They chose Ibaka. So
yeah, no, they did, and they obviously chose wrong. I mean, clearly, but you know, they that team was a championship level team, but again, they were in their early 20s and they were all like 23 years old. But even 2016, they were up 3-1 Western Conference Finals. And if you look at the series, I mean, Durant was the one who played bad in those last 3 games. I mean, they both played bad, but Durant was the one who you didn't expect to play bad. And I think he went like 8 of 27 in game 6 or something like that. It was game 7. He was better, but it still wasn't good enough to win the series. But they had that series down 3-1, and they probably would have won the championship that year. I think they would have beat Cleveland that year. Cleveland was
I
not
don't know.
as good. Cleveland was not that good of a team in 2016. They were
They were
better.
not a great team,
They were
but
better in 2017 than they were in 2016. The only reason that they lost in 2017 was Durant went to the Warriors, and there was just no way you were ever going to beat them. But if you were to compare the 2017 team to the 2016 team, Cleveland, 2017 was way better than 2016 was.
well, I mean, I don't. If OKC were to not choke the 3-1 lead in 2016, I would have picked the Cavs to win that series over the Thunder, but whatever.
I don't know. I mean that Thunder team they beat the Spurs, who was 41-1 at home that year. And they were the second best team probably in the league. I think it would probably went Warriors first team, Spurs second team, Cavs third team, and then Thunder fourth team, just looking at it as a whole. So they would have beaten, if they would have went to the finals, the two best teams in the league. I don't know. I think you probably would have went. I mean, I would have went Thunder. I think most people probably would have went Thunder in that series.
I don't know. I mean, whatever. But
I mean, yeah, it's all fantasy, but
I mean,
I'm
we've
just
clearly seen that Westbrook is just the most overrated player in NBA history, and it's just not. It's just not close. I mean,
all right. Let's chill out a little bit.
no, I'm kidding. But I mean, I don't know if there's anything else really from the start of the season.
Um,
I mean, if
I
you
would
want to talk about
say,
the Knicks,
yeah, we can talk next.
I mean, you can talk Knicks. I haven't really watched
Well,
much Knicks basketball, so
you were you not watching them on Sunday when they beat the
well,
Celtics by 30?
so I mean, okay, well, I don't know. I mean, the Celtics had won 5 straight games at that point. I mean, it's just what happens. It's just one game, dude. I don't know.
30, only scoring 75 points.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, so at least looking at the Knicks in terms of, I mean, they're competing right now at least for a playoff spot. Right now they're the 6th seed. They could, I mean, If they
They could
have
be
to
a playing
compete,
team.
they could definitely be a playing team. They could definitely be a playing
They'll
team.
be under 500, but I mean, in the East, that's a playing team in the
That's
East.
definitely a playing team.
And you look at the teams in the East. I mean, Orlando, they've fallen. I mean, they've had injuries, which definitely hurts, but they've fallen. But they'll probably be in that playing tournament area. Cleveland 6-7. I don't expect that to stay up. They'll probably drop. And then you have, Toronto's struggling. I think they've won 3 straight, but still, you don't really know what's going on with them. The Heat, I expect to be better. Chicago, they're 6-8. Charlotte 6-8. I don't really expect them to be in the play-in tournament. So unless Washington picks up, or a Charlotte or Chicago somehow is around 500, I think they could be a 9 or 10 seed.
Yeah, they definitely could. Now, I don't know, like what trade assets do then like on their current team other than RJ Barrett? Like, I mean, could you just
Well, you could trade Randall. You talking about
yeah,
trading
that's what I'm
for or
no,
trading?
that's what I'm saying is like, would you just, obviously right now you could compete for a nine between anywhere between 7 and 10, realistically, you could probably compete for, but if you're able to build up some trade value for Randall because he's played well, I mean, you you may just want to just seize that opportunity and trade him while you can for at least something
Well,
to a
they could do that, or I mean, they could keep him if they wanted to. Like in my mind, I trade him just because he's probably playing the best basketball that he's ever played, and you don't know if that's really gonna go on. He's only like 26 years old, but I mean, I'd be surprised if this stays. He stays at this type of level for the next couple years, just based on what we've seen in the past. But possibly, I mean, if they think that, then they can keep him. I'm pretty sure he's under contract for next year, also, or at least he has an option. Um, so yeah, I mean, they could keep him. I'd probably trade him. If you don't get the trade that you want, then you keep him, obviously. But if they do get a trade that they like, yeah, I'd definitely trade him.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think you trade Randall just I mean, you're not going to get any better value most likely than you would right now, or at least, before the trade deadline. I would trade him. I know the Knicks have had such a losing culture and ideally you'd like to compete and make the playoffs, but again, you need high draft picks to really build a team in this league, or most likely, unless you're bringing in free agents left and right, like maybe the Lakers or something. But you can't afford to just like be the 8 seed over and over again. And I'm not that the Knicks have been the 8 seed recently, really, but you don't want to end up like the Magic. You don't want to end up like that team. You need another piece next to Barrett, or you need something from the draft, probably, even if it's not the best draft ever. And it's not like a
Yeah,
Zion or anything, but still, I mean,
and he's under contract for next year, and then he's a free agent. So whatever team trades for him, they definitely have to give up a first round pick. I wouldn't expect 2 first round picks. That'd be kind of surprising if that were to happen, but definitely a first round pick and maybe a second round pick, maybe 2 second rounds, something like that. Probably
what
a
team?
player
I
in
mean,
return.
what do you know? What teams would be? I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. What teams would be wanting to trade for Julius Randle?
I mean, he makes 19 million this year, then 20 million next year. So, if he's going to be able to keep playing like this, or at least similar, obviously, if you're trading for him, you're probably a better team, so his stats would decrease. But for that type of money, if he could stay somewhat playing like this, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what team would trade for him. I mean, it's kind of you'd have to think of like the top teams, like the Lakers, they couldn't, the Clippers, they won't, Utah, they probably wouldn't. I mean, with all the money that they have, like Phoenix, maybe. It's kind of tough to tell like what teams would, like would Milwaukee. I I'm not really sure. Like it's kind of tough to tell.
Yeah, maybe an injury to a team. I mean, frees up a
Yeah.
spot for Randall to be traded to a contending team. We'll ultimately see, but I mean, as far as the Knicks are concerned, yeah, I'd like to see them trade Randall. I'd like to see them. I mean, they're clearly building something right now. I'd like to see them, get another high draft pick. They're gonna need it. You're not gonna. You just don't have the assets right now or the pieces to really build a championship winning team from the ground up. So I feel like it's just you
Well,
need another.
they could always sign a free agent. I mean, as long they're showing that the culture is right. The problem in the past is that they couldn't sign anyone because no one wanted to be on the Knicks because they were so bad and that there was no way they were ever gonna get good. I mean, if you were to look at the team honestly, so if they could, they're showing that with Thibodeau, with Barrett, with Emmanuel Quickly, who's been really good. He was their other first round pick. At top end, he's been injured, but if he could prove that he could stay healthy and then play pretty well in his rookie year, they could show that they have pieces, and that maybe a free agent would want to sign. I mean, I don't know who the next big free agent would be exactly. It kind of seems like everyone's kind of under contract so far, but um, you know, I'm not saying this would happen, but Kawhi, I think
That's what I
he's
was just gonna
probably
say. Yeah, I mean,
he's.
like,
I mean, I know he's an option, and they still haven't re-signed him. Maybe that happens, in this next off season, but it's probably that's the biggest free agent I could think of that will be a free agent. So I mean, like again, Giannis signed, Paul George signed. Like LeBron, obviously not. AD signed, Harden, KD, Kyrie, they're all signed. So
yeah,
I'm not really sure who else is out there.
this next year's free agent class doesn't look great. I mean, Chris Paul is a player option. I don't know exactly what the money on
He'll
that be, but
stay in.
he's gonna stay there for
Yeah, it's
sure.
like 40 million, so
Yeah.
he's not going to walk away from
I mean,
that.
like the fact that Blake Griffin is a top free agent next year is a bad sign. I mean, like I know
He's playing
Oladipo's a
terrible, by the way.
yeah, Oladipo's a free agent. I mean, you wouldn't.
Mm,
I mean, I wouldn't. He's not like the player you're looking to sign as the one that's going to push
yeah.
you from
I mean,
an
maybe
8 seed
they.
to a
I mean, maybe they just wait a year.
yeah.
You have another year of the young players. You'll have a mid first round pick, probably like 10 to. Still a lottery pick, but you could always find someone. I mean, Mitchell was 13th. Giannis was, I think, 15th. Kawhi was, I think, 15th also. So you could always find someone, but um, you know, I would say they probably go another year with these type of guys, and then maybe after the next year they maybe sign someone. So
No, I could definitely see that as the Knicks, especially. I mean, like if it was a small market team, it'd be slightly different. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, you're definitely right about the winning culture thing, and I don't know if I'm exactly right on this, but I mean, that's basically the reason why Kyrie and Katie didn't want to go to New York was because of the owner and the culture. So
well, and if Kyrie were to miss 7 games in a row, he wouldn't get as criticized for it. But yeah,
you mean in Brooklyn is what you're saying?
but if he was playing for the Knicks,
Oh yeah,
it'd
no,
be a
I see
lot
what you're saying.
different.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, definitely.
when you go to the Nets, I mean, like again, I hear all the sports talk and everything like that because I live here. No one. I mean, they talk about it, but they don't talk about it. If it was on the Knicks,
Yeah,
they talk. It'd be number one topic no matter what. So
yeah. I mean, I think that's really all though for the NBA for at least the first 15 games of the season for most teams. For most teams,
yeah.
unless you have anything else really to talk about.
Um. No, I mean that's really it. I mean, there haven't been many surprises this year. And just looking at the standings, I mean, there's a couple teams that will definitely drop, so I'm not really looking too much into it. So I'd say everything's kind of how it should be. Again, there's a couple teams like Dallas and Denver and like Miami that are struggling, but I think we all expect them to make the playoffs. So I don't think anything's that different right now. And I'd say the two best teams in the league, well, I guess just right now because we don't know about the Nets with Kyrie, I'd say are the Lakers and the Clippers. I mean, they've been the two best teams so far this year, so it's
Yeah,
looking
I
like
agree.
they'll probably meet at some point in the playoffs, and that'll probably be a really good series.
Yeah, we can spend an hour or whatever talking about NBA teams and not even mention. I mean, yeah, the Lakers and the Clippers are definitely right now the two best teams in the league. Now, we talk about the Nets, but if we'll see. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and that'll do it. We'll be back Thursday with NFL stuff. Maybe if anything else happens, we'll talk about it. But yep.